Hi, I'm Doc Marshall for Lessons.io, and today we're going to look at chord progressions. These are the chord patterns that are used in all popular songs, and they're very repetitious. Everybody uses them all the time. So let's take a look at some of the common ones that are in use. The first one is going to be a 1 and a 5. If we were in the key of C, for example, there's a C chord. Now what's the 5 chord? If this is the 1, then G would be the 5 because you count up. C, D, E, F, G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's C and G. That would be the simplest chord progression. And we know that the C is the 1 chord because that's the key we're in. So if we're in the key of G, for example, and we play a G chord, then that's our 1 chord. If you're in the key of C, C is your 1 chord, and you'd count up to the 5. So in this particular case, C and G. Now what can you do with that? Well, you can play a lot of neat songs with it, and here's one of them. Goodbye Joe, we gotta go, me oh my oh. We gotta go, pull up the rope down the bayou. A nice song by Hank Williams. Now of course, every song is not that easy, and I wish it were. I know I do. If we could only play 2 chords and play all the songs in the world, that would be wonderful. But songs get more complex, and the chord progressions start to sound very pretty. Okay? So if we want to make this 2-chord progression here even more interesting, we might add a 3rd chord to it. C, or from the key of C. And instead of going right to the 5 chord, what we'll do is we'll put a 4 chord before we get to the 5 chord. So we have a C, an F, and a G. Why F? Because if you count up, C, D, E, F. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's the 4 chord. The C chord to the F chord. That's a C to the F. That's 1, 4. Then if we're going to go to the 4 to the 5, we go from F to the G, because that's just 4, so this is 1 up from that, so that's your 5 chord. We should mention that all these numbers have a very good purpose. If I would say to you, play such and such a tune in the key of G, okay, and I play this, and I say, well, what's the rest of the chord progression? And you say 1, 4, 5. Okay, I know it's G, C, and D. And then I say, okay, let's change it to the key of A. And I say, okay, what's the chord progression? You say 1, 4, 5. Okay. Now I may know that it's A, D, and E, and you should know that, but it's so much easier to just say the numbers. And that way, whatever the key is, and you know the progression, you can go right to it. And the guitar is a very interesting instrument in that way because it's very logically thought out. So if I want to play in the key of F, make-believe, 1, 4, 5, I know that the 4 chord is right here, and I know that the 5 chord is right there. So it's now to change the chord pattern to the key of G. We're in F now. I want to change it to G. I just slide everything up. Now I got G, C, and D. It's the same thing I played before. I didn't change my fingers at all. I just changed the positioning on the neck. That's the advantage of having a good knowledge of the bar chords, okay, which we covered in other lessons. So let's look at the chord patterns once again. We know that we have the 1 and the 5. 1, 5, 1, 5. If we want a 1, 4, 5, like we have in a lot of rock and roll songs, or in the key of G, when will I be loved? that sound like that, right? That have that 1, 4, 5 chord progression. Okay? Let's move on to the next one. This one is called a 2-5-1, meaning that we start on the 2 chord. Let's make believe the key is C. And we have to start on the D minor because that's the 2 chord. And then the 5, it's 2-5-1, so it's 2, 5, and that's the G, and the 1. See, we identified the 1 as the 3rd chord. So the 3rd chord is our 1 chord, which makes our progression 2, 5, 1. Believe it or not, this is the most used chord progression in all of music, if you count all of the standards and all of the popular music and everything else, although it doesn't sound like it, but it really is, right? 2, 5, 1. Remember, when you go to a 2 chord, it's always a minor chord. First chord is major, second chord is minor, 5 chord is major, okay? So you have to know your minor chords as well, which we'll cover in another lesson, not to worry yet anyway. So we're going to play with a 2-5-1, and you might have a song that sounds like this. It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. That makes me tend to take my little bag, climb behind your couch. Okay, gentle on my mind, right? It's a 2-5-1, but at the same time we started on our C chord, which was our 1 chord, and then we went to our 2, and then we went to our 5, and then to our 1. Sometimes it's difficult to figure out the chord pattern if it doesn't start with the 1 chord and follow in that manner. But just to put it in the back of your head, that 2-5-1 is very, very useful. The next chord progression we want to look at is the 1-6-4-5. The 1 chord, let's say we're in the key of C, so we know that's the 1 chord because we've identified it. That's our key. And then we want the 6 chord, so count up from the C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're going to end up with an A, right? But 6 is also minor, so you want to play an A minor if we're in the key of C. C, A minor, 4, remember 4 from before, from the C, it went to the F, right? And then the 5, we went to the G. So it sounds like this. That is one of the famous chord progressions that are used in a lot of popular tunes, as well as a lot of your rock and roll songs. Okay, so played in the key of G, for example. He took 100 pounds of clay, then he said, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna fix this world today. Because I know what's missing." 1, 6, 4, and 5. Then we can take that same 4 chord progression and change it just a little bit. This time we'll play in the key of G, is fine, right? 1, 6, which is an E minor. But instead of going to the 4 chord, we're going to go to the 2 chord, which is here. See, if we're in the key of G, and we want to go to, this is the 1 chord, and we want to go to the 2 chord, well, that's only right here, isn't it? Make sure it's minor, of course. 6 is minor. So it's 1, 6, 2, 5, which is the D chord, or 1, 6, 2, 5. Okay? Now that one is used in a lot of the popular songs too, not so much in the rock and roll, though sometimes it can be, right? So the neck that we want. Notice too that I'm using chords that are more jazz oriented, okay? I'm playing a minor chord here. That's a jazz chord, okay? And this one over here, that's also a jazz chord. And you see here, that's the major chord, but I'm lifting up that pinky, which gives me the 7th. Makes a nice sound. And then back to our 1. So these kinds of chords played in this manner gives us the kind of sound that they had many years ago in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and even today. But you recognize some of these chord patterns as representative of the time that they were done. There's one final one, and this is an interesting one here. If we play 1, 1, 7, 4, and 4 minor. Now this is not something for beginners, but eventually you won't be a beginner, right? You'll get further down the road here. So if we play 1 and then the 7, just play the 7th. See? And then to the 4 chord. Well, if this is the 1 chord, the A, we know the 4 chord is right underneath it. See? There and there. That's going to be right there. That's the 4 chord. And then 4 minor, yes. So once again, major, add 7, 4, 4 minor. So notice what's happening over here. We're going down. That's what's happening right now. And I know you know what that song is. Desperado, don't you come to your senses. You've been out riding fences for so long now. And so on. That's a pretty difficult song to play anyway, let alone sing it. But the chord progression is what I wanted to show you. It's a 1, 1, 1, 7, 4, 4 minor. And that's what's happening. Those chords are causing you to hear this. Okay, chew on those for right now, and we'll see you next lesson.